The moment Prince William spoke on live television, a hush fell across the United Kingdom. It was the kind of silence that presses down on a room, dense and suffocating, where the ordinary hum of daily chatter stops, and every eye turns toward the screen. But this wasn't just another royal appearance, another routine public statement. This was something far more incendiary. Something that sent shockwaves through the palace corridors, across the media outlets, and directly into the living rooms of millions. What William said in that fleeting moment, barely more than a sentence, was enough to make people gasp, furrow brows, and reach for their phones, desperate to confirm if they had heard correctly. "I regret ever trusting her." Those words, simple in structure yet heavy in implication, lingered like a storm cloud over the monarchy. Every syllable seemed to carry a weight of disappointment, betrayal, and a warning that the story was far from over. But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. The British public has long been fascinated by the royal family, not just for their grandeur or their public duties, but because they are, in many ways, a mirror reflecting human emotions in an extraordinary context. Love, loyalty, envy, resentment. These emotions play out on a stage watched by millions. And when William spoke, it wasn't just a statement about a personal relationship. It was an emblem of deeper fractures within a family whose every move is scrutinized, dissected, and debated. For decades, people have speculated about tensions between William, his brother Harry, and their wives. Rumors have swirled about private disagreements, subtle slights, and moments of quiet fury that never made the headlines. But this public admission was different. It was raw, it was direct, and it was impossible to ignore. Imagine being in the studio when those words were uttered. The cameras didn't just capture William's face. They captured the tremor in his voice, the pause before he spoke, the fleeting flicker of emotion that betrayed the armor of royal composure. People watching at home might have caught the subtle tightening of his jaw, the slight narrowing of his eyes. Gestures that hinted at long-simmering frustration. And then there was the question everyone immediately asked themselves. What does Harry think? What will he do next? Sibling bonds are complicated enough under ordinary circumstances. Layer on decades of public scrutiny, the pressures of royal duty, and the entrance of a polarizing figure like Meghan Markle, and the equation becomes combustible. The public reaction was instantaneous. Social media exploded as tweets, memes, and heated debates flooded timelines. News outlets scrambled to verify the quote, dissect the context, and analyze what it meant for the royal family. Every journalist wanted a piece of the story. Every commentator had an opinion. Some framed it as William finally speaking truth to power, bravely admitting a painful reality that many suspected but few dared to acknowledge. Others criticized it as a public airing of private grievances, a moment that could exacerbate tensions and push Harry and Meghan further away from the institution they were once so closely tied to. But the truth is, no one could fully anticipate the cascade of events that this one statement might trigger. The phrase, "I regret ever trusting her," is deceptively simple, yet it opens up a labyrinth of questions. Who exactly is William referring to? What moments, conversations, or events led to this declaration? How much of this sentiment is rooted in personal betrayal, and how much is a reflection of broader concerns about the stability of the family unit? And perhaps most importantly, how will Harry, known for his fierce loyalty and protective instincts toward Meghan, react to hearing these words? The tension is palpable even in speculation. In a family that has always valued discretion and careful messaging, a statement like this is seismic. It is not a comment that can easily be walked back or explained away. Every word matters, every nuance is significant, and every reaction, both private and public, becomes part of the unfolding narrative. To understand why this moment matters, it helps to step back and consider the history of William, Harry, and Meghan. Meghan Markle entered the royal family amid intense media scrutiny. Every appearance, every word, every social media post was analyzed. The pressure was immense, not just on Meghan, but on everyone around her. William, as the future king, carries the weight of expectations, tradition, and responsibility. He is tasked with safeguarding not just the monarchy's public image, but its internal cohesion. When he speaks, his words are never casual. They are considered, deliberate, and, in this instance, devastating. The regret he expresses is not just a private feeling. It is a message, a signal to the public and to the family alike, that fractures exist and that certain trust has been broken. And yet, the drama doesn't stop there. The tension between William and Harry is well documented, from the playful sibling rivalries of their youth to the more serious disagreements of adulthood. But now, with William's admission publicly aired, the stakes are higher than ever. Harry has always been protective of Meghan, often seen defending her in interviews, public statements, and through carefully curated media appearances. His reaction to William's words is not just a matter of sibling disagreement. It is a matter of loyalty, principle, and perhaps even a reckoning that could redefine their relationship forever. How does one balance love for a sibling with disagreement over a spouse? How does one navigate a world where every decision is scrutinized and amplified by the media? These are not just hypothetical questions. They are the very real dilemmas facing the brothers in the aftermath of William's statement. Consider the broader context, too. The royal family has weathered scandals before, from divorces to controversial public remarks. Yet rarely has a single statement captured such a perfect storm of emotional resonance, historical significance, and media frenzy. When William spoke those words, he tapped into universal themes: betrayal, regret, loyalty, and the consequences of trusting someone who ultimately disappoints. These themes are relatable even outside the palace walls, which may explain why the statement resonated so powerfully with the public. People could sense the authenticity behind the words, the human vulnerability that peeked through the polished exterior of royalty. But there is another layer, one that makes this story even more compelling. William's statement does not exist in a vacuum. It intersects with ongoing narratives about Harry and Meghan's departure from royal duties, their media appearances, and their own public statements. The timing of his words, their delivery on live television, and the implications for both public perception and family dynamics create a tension that is impossible to ignore. Every viewer watching at that moment felt the weight of anticipation. What would come next? Would Harry respond immediately? Would Meghan address the comment publicly or remain silent, letting speculation swirl? The uncertainty is part of the drama, part of what keeps the audience glued to the unfolding story. Even more striking is the emotional undertone of William's regret. It is not casual disapproval, nor is it detached criticism. It is personal, intimate, and deeply human. When he says he regrets trusting Meghan, he is revealing a fracture that goes beyond disagreements or miscommunication. He is admitting that something fundamental has been compromised, something that cannot be easily repaired. Trust, once broken, leaves scars that are visible even in the most composed of faces. And for a family whose every move is scrutinized, the consequences of that broken trust are amplified, creating ripples that reach far beyond the palace walls. The public reaction only heightened the drama. Social media platforms became arenas for debate, speculation, and opinion. Headlines splashed across news sites: Prince William's stunning admission, regret in the royal family. Harry's next move could shock the UK. Each report fueled curiosity. Each discussion added layers of tension. And yet, despite the media frenzy, there was a sense that this was only the beginning. That the real story, the private conversations, and the consequences of William's statement had yet to unfold. And this brings us to the heart of why this story matters so profoundly right now. In a world where the royal family is constantly under the microscope, every word, gesture, and appearance carries meaning. William's statement is not just a fleeting moment. It is a pivot point, a lens through which the public can examine loyalty, family dynamics, and the pressures of living in the spotlight. For Harry, Meghan, and the rest of the family, it is a challenge, a test of resilience, and a potential catalyst for confrontation. For the public, it is a window into the human emotions behind the royal facade, revealing that even in palaces, hearts can be broken and trust can be shattered. And just when you think the moment has passed, just when you believe that the cameras have captured the full extent of William's statement, there is a subtle, almost imperceptible beat, a pause, a glance, a flicker of expression that hints at more to come. Because in the royal family, as in any family, words carry weight, silence carries meaning, and every reaction is a story waiting to be told. What William said on that live broadcast was shocking enough, but what came next? The private conversations, the decisions, the ripples of regret remains a mystery. A mystery that will unfold, piece by piece, chapter by chapter, revealing the full story of trust, betrayal, and the complex bonds that tie these extraordinary individuals together. And that's where our story begins. Not just with William's words, but with the consequences that will follow. Not just with the shock of the moment, but with the human emotions, conflicts, and revelations that lie beneath. Because the truth is rarely simple, especially in a family whose every heartbeat is watched by the world. What William said on live TV is only the opening act. What comes next will test loyalties, challenge assumptions, and perhaps change the course of the royal family forever. And the question that hangs over everything, echoing in the hearts of millions across the UK and beyond, is this: how will Harry respond? And will trust ever be restored, or is the fracture too deep to heal? But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Live television has a way of exposing truth in ways that no scripted statement ever could. That's the thought that ran through the minds of millions the moment Prince William's words cut through the airwaves like a thunderclap. For years, the royal family had mastered the art of composure. Public appearances, interviews, and official statements were choreographed down to the second. Smiles were measured, gestures refined, and every word vetted to ensure it aligned with centuries of tradition. But on this particular day, tradition faltered. For just a moment, the armor of royal decorum cracked, and the world glimpsed something real, raw, and profoundly human. A prince grappling with regret, betrayal, and the consequences of a decision that changed his family forever. The studio lights blazed, reflecting off polished floors, cameras swiveling to capture every nuance. The audience, both in studio and millions more watching from home, waited expectantly. William stepped up to the microphone, his posture impeccable, his face composed. Yet there was a tension, subtle but undeniable, that hinted at the emotional storm beneath. He began speaking about family, trust, and responsibility, but it wasn't until the words, "I regret ever trusting her," slipped from his lips that the room collectively froze. For a brief, suspended moment, no one breathed. The statement was simple, almost deceptively so, but the weight of history, expectation, and emotion behind it was immeasurable. Imagine, for a second, being present in that studio. You see a man, Prince William, future king, carefully choosing each word. You watch as he hesitates, the tiniest flicker of doubt passing over his eyes, and then you hear the confession. It lands like a hammer strike. Gasps ripple through the audience. Phones are lifted midair. Social media ignites with a single thought. Did he really just say that? Journalists lean forward, scribbling notes, already anticipating the headlines that will dominate tomorrow's news cycle. And all the while, William's voice remains steady, controlled, yet layered with an unmistakable vulnerability that humanizes him in ways rarely witnessed by the public. The brilliance and the shock of this moment lies in its delivery. William did not shout, he did not rant, and he did not appear vindictive. Instead, he spoke with a calm intensity that made the statement feel inevitable, almost tragic. He wasn't airing grievances for drama. He was revealing a truth that had been simmering quietly, a truth that had festered in private conversations, behind closed doors, and within the intricate dynamics of a family under relentless scrutiny. Every pause, every inflection, every slight narrowing of the eyes communicated volumes more than the words themselves. And that, perhaps, is why the moment resonated so profoundly. It felt honest. Social media reacted instantly. Hashtags like #WilliamSpeaks and #RoyalRegret began trending within minutes. Memes juxtaposed William's solemn demeanor with the playful antics of his youth, highlighting the stark contrast between the prince we grew up watching and the man standing before us now. Commentary flowed from every corner: political analysts, royal historians, journalists, and ordinary citizens alike. Opinions were polarized. Some lauded William for his bravery, praising him for articulating sentiments that many suspected but none had dared to vocalize publicly. Others criticized him, arguing that airing such personal reflections on live television risked widening the rift with Harry and Meghan, potentially creating irreparable tension. Yet even in criticism, there was acknowledgement of the raw honesty embedded in his words. Behind the scenes, palace aides were scrambling. While the public saw composure, the reality was far messier. Private communications buzzed with urgency, strategists debating how to manage the narrative. Every angle was considered, from potential backlash to media spin. But William, in that moment, appeared impervious. He had made a conscious decision to speak, and he did so with precision. The clarity of his regret left no room for misinterpretation. Trust had been broken, wounds had been inflicted, and some fractures may never heal. And then there was the audience, the public. For decades, the British people had observed the royal family through a lens of ritual, ceremony, and tradition. But this moment stripped away the gloss. It revealed that even those who live within gilded walls experience heartbreak, frustration, and disappointment. It reminded viewers that trust, once shattered, can leave a scar far more lasting than any media headline or official statement. Millions of people felt an uncanny connection to William's admission. For some, it mirrored personal experiences of betrayal. For others, it offered a rare glimpse into a world otherwise defined by privilege and distance. It was both shocking and strangely relatable. What made this moment all the more extraordinary was the timing. Meghan Markle had, over the years, cultivated both admiration and criticism in equal measure. Her entry into the royal family was met with fanfare, curiosity, and, inevitably, skepticism. Public opinion fluctuated with every interview, every red carpet appearance, and every carefully staged royal outing. William's statement, delivered with such solemn finality, reframed the narrative. It was no longer about the image projected by Meghan or Harry. It was about the personal impact on those closest to them, about relationships strained under the weight of expectation, scrutiny, and human emotion. And then, inevitably, the question arises, what did Harry think? Known for his protective nature and fierce loyalty toward Meghan, Harry's reaction to hearing William's words would be pivotal. The tension between the brothers had long simmered under the public eye, but now it had erupted, subtly yet unmistakably, into the spotlight. Every analyst, commentator, and viewer wondered how he would respond, whether with measured silence, public statements, or strategic media appearances designed to defend his wife and, by extension, his choices. The dynamic between the brothers, already complex, had now entered a new, unpredictable chapter. The studio audience, acutely aware of the weight of the moment, leaned forward as though anticipating the next revelation. William's regret was not an isolated statement. It was a lens through which viewers could understand the intricate web of family, loyalty, and the pressures of a life lived under constant observation. The human element, the palpable tension, the visible strain, the unmistakable sorrow, transcended the palace walls. It reached directly into the hearts of those watching, eliciting empathy, intrigue, and in some cases, outright shock. What William said would be dissected for months, perhaps years. Every word, every pause, every subtle gesture would be analyzed, debated, and contextualized within both historical and contemporary frameworks. Royal historians would reference it in future biographies. Journalists would revisit it in documentaries. Social media threads would debate its implications endlessly. And yet, for all the analysis, the most compelling aspect remained the emotional core. A man expressing regret, confronting consequences, and revealing vulnerabilities that few had seen before. The beauty of live television is that it does not allow for revision. Edited interviews can be polished, public statements can be managed, and official communications can be carefully crafted. But in that fleeting moment, William's regret was exposed in its purest form. The impact was immediate, undeniable, and electrifying. Viewers across the UK, and indeed, the world, felt the resonance of that single phrase, and the story was only beginning to unfold. But just as the moment reached its peak, as the audience collectively absorbed the weight of William's words, a subtle shift occurred. A glance across the room, a fleeting expression, a pause that spoke volumes. These small details hinted at reactions yet to come. Behind closed doors, in the quiet of private quarters, the reverberations of that statement were already taking hold. Conversations were being re-examined, alliances reconsidered, and loyalties tested. The public may have seen only a single phrase, but the private implications were vast, tangled, and potentially explosive. And so, the stage was set. The United Kingdom had witnessed a rare, candid glimpse into the emotional life of a royal family under strain. William's words had shaken assumptions, provoked debate, and sparked curiosity. But even as the cameras panned away and the live broadcast concluded, one fact remained clear: this was just the beginning. Behind the measured smiles and rehearsed gestures, a storm was quietly gathering, a storm that would test bonds, reveal truths, and perhaps redefine relationships forever. What William revealed on live television was not merely a confession. It was a call to attention, a signal that the family's internal dynamics were far more complicated than the public had ever imagined. And while the nation absorbed the shock, a more pressing question lingered in every mind. How would Harry respond? Because in a family defined by loyalty, love, and centuries of tradition, trust once broken is not easily repaired. And what came next would test the very foundations of the royal family, and no one saw it coming. I regret ever trusting her. The words lingered in the air long after they were spoken, reverberating across living rooms, social media feeds, and news headlines. On the surface, it seemed simple, a straightforward admission of disappointment. But within the royal family, where every word is measured, every phrase weighed, and every gesture scrutinized, these words were explosive. They were a rare crack in the facade of composed royalty, a confession that revealed a personal fracture at the heart of one of the most public families in the world. For Prince William, trust has never been a casual matter. As the future king of the United Kingdom, his life has been defined by duty, expectation, and a constant need for loyalty from advisors, family members, and those closest to him. But when trust is broken, the consequences ripple outward in ways few outsiders can fully comprehend. To say he regrets trusting Meghan Markle is to admit that someone he welcomed into his family, someone he allowed to become part of the inner circle, has caused wounds deep enough to challenge the bonds that hold his family together. The confession itself is almost Shakespearean in its intensity. Imagine the tension. A man standing before the public, the cameras rolling, millions of eyes upon him, uttering a statement that could fracture relationships and ignite speculation worldwide. In that single sentence, William conveyed more than regret. He revealed the emotional burden he had carried for years, the private frustrations, the moments of doubt, and the internal struggle between loyalty and disappointment. This was not a casual remark. It was a rare, unfiltered glimpse into the private mind of a man whose every emotion is usually hidden behind centuries of royal decorum. To understand the depth of William's words, one must consider the context. The royal family is bound by duty, tradition, and public expectation. Every new member is scrutinized, tested, and subtly evaluated. Meghan Markle's entrance into this world was met with a mixture of curiosity, excitement, and caution. She was an outsider, a figure who brought modernity, media savvy, and an intense public gaze. While William initially welcomed her warmly, hoping to expand the family and embrace a new era, the challenges quickly became apparent. Differences in upbringing, expectations, and personal priorities created tension that, over time, eroded trust and created the fissures that William alluded to on live television. Trust is rarely lost overnight. It is a slow, often imperceptible erosion. For William, the tipping point likely came after a series of incidents that cumulatively revealed incompatibilities and frustrations. These moments are private, shielded from public view, yet their effects are enduring. A glance in a meeting that felt dismissive, a decision made without consultation, a perceived slight in the media. All these small fractures accumulate until the weight becomes unbearable. And when that trust is finally acknowledged as broken, the regret is profound, tinged with sorrow, and colored by the knowledge that some relationships can never fully recover. William's confession also carries a subtle, yet powerful subtext about responsibility. As the future head of the monarchy, he must balance personal feelings with public duty. Expressing regret is not merely an emotional act. It is a recognition of the consequences of trust misplaced. It signals to the public that even in the most controlled environments, human emotions can disrupt systems, create tension, and influence decisions at the highest levels. In a way, William's statement serves as both personal reflection and a cautionary tale, reminding the world that the royal family, for all its ceremony and privilege, is still governed by human fallibility. The emotional resonance of this confession cannot be overstated. Millions of viewers sensed the gravity behind the words, feeling the weight of a relationship strained to the breaking point. Unlike a scripted statement or a public relations release, this admission was raw. It allowed the public to see William as a man, not just a prince, as a brother, not just a royal figurehead. And in doing so, it sparked empathy, intrigue, and, in some quarters, controversy. To admit regret publicly is a bold act, one that carries both vulnerability and power, and William navigated this delicate balance with precision, control, and subtlety. Yet, the confession raises inevitable questions. What specific actions or behaviors led to this moment of regret? How much of it is rooted in personal disappointment, and how much is influenced by broader family dynamics or public pressures? And perhaps most pressing, how will Harry respond? Known for his loyalty and protective instincts toward Meghan, Harry's reaction is a pivotal element in the unfolding drama. Every public statement, every interview, and every private conversation is now scrutinized for signs of tension, alignment, or potential reconciliation. The stakes are immense, not just for family harmony, but for the public perception of the monarchy itself. William's words also highlight the complexity of modern royal relationships. In an era dominated by media scrutiny, social media influence, and instantaneous global reaction, personal disagreements are rarely contained within palace walls. What might once have been private matters now become public spectacles. Every gesture is analyzed, every sentence quoted, every expression dissected. For William, this means that expressing regret is not merely a personal catharsis. It is a carefully measured act that must balance honesty, diplomacy, and the recognition of the consequences of airing grievances so publicly. The confession also exposes the delicate interplay between loyalty and disappointment. William is a man torn between love for his brother, a desire to maintain family cohesion, and frustration with the disruptions that have strained their relationships. Trust, once broken, complicates even the closest bonds. And when that trust is publicly acknowledged as broken, it amplifies both the emotional and social consequences. The ripple effect touches not only the immediate family but also advisors, the media, and a global audience invested in the monarchy's image. William's rare confession serves as a window into a world most of us will never fully understand, a world where relationships are simultaneously personal, political, and symbolic. The balance between private sentiment and public duty is delicate, and missteps are magnified in ways that few can comprehend. Yet, in acknowledging regret, William humanizes himself, making the audience privy to a moment of vulnerability that transcends royal protocol. It is this humanization that makes his words resonate so profoundly, eliciting empathy and fascination from millions. And yet, as the audience digests William's regret, another layer of tension emerges. The potential impact on Harry. The protective instinct Harry has toward Meghan is legendary, from interviews to subtle public gestures. His response to William's words is not merely a matter of personal pride. It is a measure of loyalty, family dynamics, and strategic calculation. Will he confront his brother privately? Will he issue public statements? Or will he remain silent, letting speculation and tension build? The uncertainty keeps both the family and the public on edge, ensuring that the narrative continues to unfold with every passing day. The confession also forces a reflection on the nature of trust itself. Trust is fragile, elusive, and often taken for granted until it is lost. For William, the acknowledgement of misplaced trust is a moment of both personal sorrow and public significance. It reminds the audience that even in lives of wealth, power, and privilege, human emotions remain unpredictable and relationships remain vulnerable. The lesson is universal. Trust must be nurtured, protected, and earned, and when it is broken, the consequences can be profound and far-reaching. Yet, despite the gravity of William's words, there is also a subtle brilliance in their delivery. He does not attack, blame, or vilify. He does not paint Meghan as a villain. Instead, he states a truth, a personal reality that is both measured and devastating. The restraint, the precision, and the emotional weight make the confession more impactful, allowing it to resonate deeply with viewers. It is a masterclass in subtle communication, where the power lies not in the volume or drama, but in the quiet, deliberate articulation of regret. But there is another dimension to consider, the ripple effect across the monarchy. William's confession is not an isolated event. It is part of a larger narrative that encompasses family relationships, public perception, and media influence. Every royal appearance, every statement, and every gesture will now be interpreted through the lens of this admission. The stakes are enormous. Misinterpretation or misalignment could escalate tensions, fuel speculation, and create further fractures within the family. The delicate dance between personal emotion and public duty has never been more visible or more perilous. As William's words reverberated, the audience could sense the weight of history pressing down on the moment. Generations of royal tradition, centuries of expectation, and the intense scrutiny of the global media coalesced around a single, simple statement. I regret ever trusting her. It is a phrase that will be remembered, quoted, and analyzed for years to come. Yet, within its simplicity lies complexity. A web of human emotion, familial tension, and the inevitable consequences of choices made in the most scrutinized family in the world. And just when it seems that the confession has reached its full impact, a subtle tension lingers. The question of Harry's reaction, the uncertainty of Meghan's response, and the potential long-term consequences of this revelation hang in the air. It is a story far from complete, a drama still unfolding, and a narrative that will continue to captivate, provoke, and intrigue. Because in the world of the royal family, where every word matters and every relationship carries historical weight, a single confession can ignite a chain of events that no one could have predicted. What William revealed on live television was not merely a statement of personal regret. It was a spark, a signal, a catalyst for events that may redefine the very dynamics of the family. And as the nation watched, as the world speculated, one question remained. How would Harry respond? And what would be the next chapter in a story already charged with tension, emotion, and the unmistakable weight of royal expectation? But what came next would test loyalties, reveal hidden fractures, and shock even those closest to the family, and no one saw it coming. Some fractures in life are invisible, yet they leave the deepest scars. Some arguments pass, some mistakes are forgiven, but others linger, echoing in moments that should feel ordinary, haunting the edges of relationships long after the words have been spoken. For the British royal family, the wounds created by Prince William's regret over trusting Meghan Markle are precisely this type: deep, enduring, and not easily mended. On live television, when he admitted the words that stunned millions, he was not just speaking about a single moment of disappointment. He was speaking about years of subtle betrayals, misunderstandings, and emotional fractures that have reshaped the very core of the family. The phrase, "some wounds were self-inflicted, trust was broken," is not casual commentary. It is an acknowledgement that the family has endured not just external pressure, but internal strain. Moments of miscommunication, decisions that left lasting consequences, and actions by those closest that triggered pain no one could publicly see. For William, these wounds are intensely personal. They are reminders of moments when expectations were unmet, promises left unfulfilled, and loyalties tested in ways that were both intimate and profoundly public. They are scars that cannot simply be covered by public appearances, smiles, or rehearsed statements. It is important to understand that these wounds are not the result of a single incident or a single person's actions. They are cumulative, built over time, shaped by personalities, pressures, and the extraordinary environment in which this family lives. Royals are expected to maintain poise under pressure, yet every decision carries consequences. Every slight misstep can become headline news, every personal disagreement magnified beyond measure. Trust, once broken, is not easily repaired, especially when it involves people whose lives are not their own, whose private moments are constantly observed, and whose every relationship is scrutinized under the public microscope. William's regret is entwined with these wounds. To express remorse for trusting someone who later caused significant disruption is not merely a personal admission. It is a recognition of deep familial consequences. It signals that the pain is not superficial, that the family has suffered in ways both visible and invisible. The tension between William and Harry, already delicate, has been exacerbated by these fractures, creating a scenario where private disagreements now carry global weight. Every glance, every comment, every action is now interpreted through the lens of this underlying hurt. The wounds are also complicated by the interplay of public perception and private emotion. Meghan Markle's presence in the royal family introduced both excitement and tension. She brought a fresh perspective, modern thinking, and an unprecedented media presence. But she also brought scrutiny, disagreements, and challenges to established norms. In a family where tradition is the backbone, this combination created friction. The result was a series of small, cumulative events, arguments behind closed doors, misunderstandings in private meetings, and decisions made without consensus that gradually eroded trust and left lingering resentment. One must also consider the emotional stakes for William himself. He is not only a brother and husband, he is the future king. The weight of responsibility is immense. Every personal conflict is magnified. Every perceived slight becomes a symbol of potential disruption to the monarchy itself. Trust, in this context, is not a casual feeling. It is the foundation upon which relationships, family cohesion, and the institution itself are built. When trust is broken, the ripple effects are felt far beyond the immediate circle, affecting advisors, staff, and even the public's perception of the monarchy. But these wounds are not only about regret. They are about the pain of feeling betrayed in ways that cannot easily be addressed. Imagine the internal struggle of knowing that someone you welcomed into your family has caused emotional harm, yet also needing to maintain public decorum, family unity, and your own composure. For William, this struggle is compounded by love for his brother, loyalty to the institution, and a desire to protect the family from further scrutiny. It is a delicate balance, and one that few outsiders could ever fully understand. The impact of these wounds is also evident in the subtle tensions between William and Harry. The brothers' relationship has always been complex, blending camaraderie, rivalry, and deep familial loyalty. But the fractures introduced by Meghan's entry into the family and William's public admission of regret have intensified this dynamic. Every interaction is now charged with unspoken tension, every conversation a potential minefield. The private disagreements that once remained behind closed doors are now amplified, carrying consequences for public appearances, media narratives, and family cohesion. And yet, these wounds are not limited to William and Harry. Kate Middleton, as William's partner and an integral part of the family, has been deeply affected as well. Her perspective, often understated, has been shaped by witnessing these conflicts, attempting to mediate tensions, and maintaining composure under pressure. The emotional weight she bears is significant, yet rarely visible. In the public eye, she appears serene, supportive, and composed. Behind the scenes, however, she navigates the subtle intricacies of trust, loyalty, and emotional preservation within a family undergoing unprecedented scrutiny. The wounds also extend to Meghan herself. Publicly, she has projected confidence, independence, and resilience. Privately, however, the strain of these familial fractures and the perception of broken trust has likely created its own emotional toll. The complexity of navigating personal relationships while under constant observation is immense. Every step, every word, every appearance is dissected for meaning. The emotional landscape is fraught with tension, and the pain is both personal and magnified by circumstance. Social media and public perception add yet another layer. The world has become an audience to the family's struggles, interpreting every comment, every glance, and every decision through a lens of scrutiny. What once might have been private wounds are now public narratives. Memes, commentary, and endless speculation flood platforms within minutes of any royal statement. This external pressure intensifies the emotional stakes, amplifying the sense of isolation, vulnerability, and regret experienced by those involved. Historians and royal commentators alike have noted that the monarchy has survived countless scandals, disputes, and betrayals. Yet few situations have carried the same emotional intensity and global visibility as the fractures highlighted by William's live television confession. The combination of personal betrayal, sibling tension, media scrutiny, and public fascination creates a scenario unlike any in recent history. The wounds are real, deep, and persistent, leaving traces that will influence decisions, relationships, and public perception for years to come. And it is in this context that we understand the true weight of William's words. He is speaking not just about a singular disappointment, but about the cumulative emotional cost of relationships strained under extraordinary circumstances. The trust he extended, the familial bonds he honored, and the openness he offered were all tested. And in his view, broken. To acknowledge this publicly is to admit vulnerability, to reveal the hidden fractures of the royal family, and to signal that the consequences of these wounds are far-reaching. Yet even as the audience absorbs the depth of these wounds, a question lingers. Can they ever truly heal? In a family where every action is monitored, every word magnified, and every relationship scrutinized, repair is not straightforward. Trust, once fractured in a public and personal arena, is difficult to restore. Emotional scars, however carefully managed, leave lasting marks on interactions, decisions, and perceptions. The wounds William referenced are not just about the past. They are about an ongoing struggle to reconcile personal feelings, family loyalty, and public duty in a world that watches every move. What makes these wounds particularly compelling is their universality. While the audience may not live in a palace or navigate the unique pressures of royalty, everyone has experienced betrayal, disappointment, and the challenge of repairing trust. This is what makes the story so resonant. Viewers see themselves reflected in the emotional complexity of these relationships, the heartbreak of unmet expectations, and the difficulty of reconciling loyalty with personal disappointment. William's confession, in its depth and honesty, transcends the royal sphere, connecting directly with fundamental human experience. And yet, as with any complex narrative, the wounds are not static. They evolve, interact, and intensify over time. Every news statement, every public appearance, every media leak can reopen old fractures or create new ones. For William, Harry, and Meghan, the challenge is not simply to address past hurts, but to navigate a constantly shifting landscape of expectation, scrutiny, and relational tension. The wounds may never fully disappear, but how the family responds, adapts, and confronts these fractures will determine the trajectory of their relationships and the monarchy itself. The moment William admitted regret, the nation held its collective breath. What had been private pain became public narrative. What had been internal fractures now demanded attention, analysis, and understanding. The wounds that cannot heal are more than emotional. They are structural, relational, and symbolic. They speak to the delicate balance between love, loyalty, duty, and expectation in a family whose every move is magnified by history, media, and public fascination. And just when it seems the gravity of these wounds has been fully realized, the question of Harry's reaction looms larger than ever. Known for his protectiveness of Meghan, his loyalty, and his impulsive streak, Harry's next move could either mend or exacerbate the fractures within the family. The tension is palpable. The wounds are deep. And the next chapter in this story promises to reveal just how far these emotional fractures will reach and what they might cost the royal family in the process. But what came next would reveal the depths of the pain, the consequences of broken trust, and a confrontation that no one saw coming. No one knows loyalty like Harry, a royal insider once said. And for those who have followed the family closely, it's true. Prince Harry has always been a brother willing to defend, protect, and stand unwaveringly beside those he loves. But loyalty, like trust, is a double-edged sword. It can inspire courage, forge unbreakable bonds, and fuel resilience. Yet when it collides with disappointment, betrayal, or public scrutiny, it can ignite storms that few can navigate without consequence. And now, after Prince William's live television confession of regret over trusting Meghan Markle, Harry's loyalty is being tested in a way he has never experienced. The moment William spoke, the world collectively braced for Harry's reaction. Known for both his sensitivity and his impulsive tendencies, Harry had long been protective of Meghan, defending her in interviews, public statements, and social media appearances. For years, he had been the brother who shields, the husband who defends, and the son who navigates both tradition and modernity in the royal framework. Yet now, hearing William's words dripping with regret and subtle condemnation, posed a challenge that struck at the heart of his dual roles. Protector and prince. Imagine the scene privately, away from cameras and public scrutiny. Harry, alone with Meghan or perhaps with his closest advisors, processes the statement. His mind races. How could William say this? What does it imply about the family? Is it a warning, a critique, or a call to action? For Harry, the question is not just about the content of William's words. It is about their emotional undertone, their potential ripple effect, and the implicit challenge they represent to loyalty, love, and family cohesion. Every loyal instinct within him bristles, recognizing that the foundation of trust that once existed between the brothers has been shaken. Harry's loyalty to Meghan is more than symbolic, it is deeply personal. From the moment their relationship became serious, he has been her steadfast ally, navigating media attacks, public scrutiny, and the pressures of royal duty alongside her. This protective instinct is both a source of strength and a potential point of conflict. When William expressed regret about trusting Meghan, Harry was confronted with a choice: to respond publicly, confront privately, or remain silent. Each path carries profound consequences for family unity, public perception, and personal relationships. The emotional stakes for Harry are enormous. On one hand, he has a deep love for his brother, a bond forged through childhood, shared loss, and years of companionship. On the other hand, his loyalty to Meghan compels him to challenge any narrative that casts her in a negative light, whether public or private. This duality creates a tension that is both complex and compelling. Every decision Harry makes is now informed by these competing forces: familial loyalty, marital fidelity, and the inescapable scrutiny of a global audience. Harry's potential reactions can be imagined in several ways. He might respond publicly, defending Meghan with a carefully crafted statement designed to uphold her reputation and assert his loyalty. He might choose private confrontation, seeking a one-on-one conversation with William to clarify intentions, express hurt, and attempt reconciliation. Or he might remain silent, letting speculation swirl and hoping that time, distance, or shared understanding will mend the growing divide. Each scenario carries consequences, and the choice is complicated by the emotional weight of both personal and public expectation. What makes this moment particularly intense is the public nature of William's confession. Trust, already fragile, has been fractured in a way that cannot be ignored. By airing regret on live television, William has forced Harry into a position where a response, whether immediate or delayed, is unavoidable. In families, disagreements are often private, resolved behind closed doors. But when one party exposes raw emotion publicly, the other party is compelled to act, react, or strategize. For Harry, this is not merely a personal challenge. It is a public reckoning, a moment where every choice will be scrutinized, debated, and amplified. Moreover, the fracture between the brothers is not simply emotional. It has symbolic resonance. William, as the future king, embodies duty, tradition, and public expectation. Harry, by contrast, has carved a path that blends royal responsibility with modern independence, media engagement, and personal autonomy. Their differing approaches to family, loyalty, and public life are now colliding in a very public forum. William's regret, therefore, is more than a personal reflection. It is a commentary on the broader dynamics of family, duty, and the intersection of tradition and modernity. The emotional complexity of Harry's position cannot be overstated. He is navigating grief, responsibility, loyalty, and the need for justice for those he loves. In private, he may feel anger, frustration, or even betrayal at William's words. Yet he must also consider the optics, the implications for the monarchy, and the long-term effects on relationships that matter deeply. Every action is fraught with potential consequences, and every hesitation carries emotional weight. The delicate balance between reaction and restraint defines this chapter of the unfolding drama. The public, of course, is acutely aware of the tension. Speculation is rampant, fueled by every media outlet, social commentator, and social media platform. Viewers dissect past interviews, body language, and known interactions between the brothers. Every appearance, every comment, and every photograph is now interpreted as a clue, a sign, or a warning. For Harry, this scrutiny adds another layer of pressure. His loyalty is no longer a private matter. It is a narrative shaped and consumed by millions around the world. In addition to public scrutiny, Harry's emotional stakes are intensified by the historical context of sibling dynamics. Growing up, the bond between William and Harry was forged in both playful camaraderie and shared adversity. Loss, public pressure, and the weight of expectation created a connection that is rare in any family, let alone one constantly observed by the world. The introduction of Meghan and William's subsequent public regret threatens to reshape this bond. Trust, once foundational, now requires careful negotiation, understanding, and potentially confrontation. Harry's loyalty also extends beyond family to the principles he holds dear. He has consistently shown commitment to fairness, protection, and advocacy for those he loves. William's words, while expressing personal regret, could be interpreted as undermining these principles. For Harry, the challenge is not simply emotional. It is moral, symbolic, and strategic. How does one defend loyalty without inflaming conflict? How does one reconcile love for a sibling with perceived injustice toward a spouse? These are not abstract questions. They are the lived reality of a man navigating the pressures of family, duty, and public expectation simultaneously. And yet, Harry's potential for decisive action adds to the tension. Known for his impulsive streak, his willingness to challenge authority, and his deep sense of justice, he is capable of responding in ways that could escalate or mitigate the situation. Every step he takes is laden with consequences. A miscalculation could intensify the rift. A measured response could pave the way for reconciliation. But the uncertainty itself is electrifying. For both the family and the public, the question of Harry's next move hangs like a storm cloud on the horizon, promising confrontation, revelation, or both. The dynamic also extends to Meghan. Her presence, influence, and public perception are inseparable from Harry's loyalty. Any perceived critique of her, particularly from William, triggers an immediate emotional and strategic response from Harry. This is not merely about defending a spouse. It is about asserting values, protecting family, and maintaining dignity under extreme scrutiny. The emotional, relational, and symbolic stakes converge in a single, high-pressure moment, a moment that is as compelling for viewers as it is consequential for the family. Furthermore, the ripple effects of this tension are immense. Advisors, staff, and even the media are drawn into the narrative, interpreting actions, predicting outcomes, and shaping perceptions. The trust that has been fractured in one relationship now impacts multiple layers of the family and institution. William's regret, once expressed, becomes both a personal reflection and a public catalyst, igniting debates, speculation, and anticipation. The stakes are not only personal, but historical. Sibling relationships in the royal family carry implications for succession, representation, and legacy. Harry's response is therefore about more than emotion. It is about history, duty, and the preservation of familial and institutional integrity. How he chooses to navigate this moment will influence not only his relationship with William, but also public perception of the monarchy, media narratives, and the broader cultural conversation about loyalty, trust, and accountability. And yet, amid all this, Harry remains a human being, capable of both emotional brilliance and impulsive missteps. He is a man wrestling with love, loyalty, and the pressures of public life, trying to protect what he values while navigating a landscape rife with potential conflict. The weight of expectation, combined with the fracture of trust expressed by William, creates a combustible scenario, one where every thought, every glance, and every decision matters. As the world watches, waiting for Harry's reaction, one truth becomes clear: the story is far from over. The bonds between brothers, between spouses, and within the family are being tested in real time, under the gaze of millions. Trust once broken cannot be ignored, and loyalty once challenged cannot remain static. The unfolding drama promises confrontation, revelation, and consequences that will reverberate far beyond the palace walls. And just when it seems the tension cannot grow any further, a private meeting, an unspoken conversation, or a carefully calculated action will ignite the next chapter, one that may redefine relationships, reveal hidden truths, and shock both the family and the public alike. But what came next would force a confrontation that would leave no one unaffected, and the outcome would be nothing short of extraordinary. When Meghan Markle first appeared on the global stage as a potential future member of the British royal family, few could predict the seismic impact she would have, not just on public perception, but on the very dynamics of the monarchy itself. Her entrance was heralded with excitement, curiosity, and an undeniable media frenzy. She was modern, independent, and outspoken. A figure whose charisma and influence would eventually challenge centuries of tradition, reshaping not only the royal family's public image, but also the emotional landscape of its most intimate relationships. Meghan's rise within the royal family coincided with a period of heightened media scrutiny, relentless social commentary, and global fascination with the private lives of royals. Her every appearance was dissected, every gesture analyzed, and every word scrutinized for hidden meaning. Yet beyond the headlines, her presence catalyzed a deeper transformation within the family, sparking tension, admiration, and, unavoidably, fracture. For Prince William, Meghan's integration into the royal fold was initially a hopeful one. He welcomed her, supported her, and sought to bridge the gap between tradition and modernity. But as time went on, cracks began to appear, revealing differences in approach, expectation, and emotional alignment that would have lasting consequences. The rift, however, was not immediate. Meghan's early days in the family were marked by charm, diplomacy, and an almost cinematic appeal. She impressed with her intelligence, poise, and commitment to charitable work, quickly gaining public admiration. Yet beneath the surface, the pressures of royal life, constant media attention, public opinion, and intricate family dynamics began to weigh heavily. Every step she took was scrutinized, and every misstep magnified. The clash between personal authenticity and institutional expectation became inevitable. Where Meghan sought independence and influence, the monarchy prioritized protocol and tradition. The tension between these priorities created the conditions for the rift that would later become undeniable. William's perception of Meghan shifted subtly over time. Early enthusiasm gave way to caution, and caution eventually evolved into frustration. The very qualities that made Meghan appealing to Harry. Her confidence, assertiveness, and modern outlook posed challenges within the framework of a family rooted in centuries of expectation. William's regret, expressed publicly on live television, was the culmination of this tension. It was a reflection not of a single incident, but of years of complex, layered interactions that had eroded trust, challenged loyalty, and forced the family to confront realities they could no longer ignore. Harry, in contrast, saw Meghan's rise through a lens of loyalty and admiration. He was captivated not just by her charisma, but by her ability to navigate a world he himself often found restrictive and challenging. Her presence offered him both partnership and sanctuary, a voice of support in a life defined by obligation, scrutiny, and inherited responsibility. Yet this admiration also intensified his protective instincts, placing him in direct emotional alignment with Meghan and, inevitably, at odds with William when disagreements arose. The loyalty Harry displayed would soon become both a strength and a source of conflict, highlighting the deep divides emerging within the family. The media played a pivotal role in the rift's evolution. Headlines alternated between adulation and criticism, crafting narratives that often amplified tension. Meghan was alternately lauded for her modern influence and vilified for perceived disruptions to tradition. Social media became an unrelenting echo chamber, magnifying every minor dispute and turning private friction into public spectacle. In this environment, trust became both fragile and essential, yet increasingly difficult to sustain. William's regret, expressed years later, was inseparable from the emotional and social pressures that had mounted alongside Meghan's rise. At the heart of this rift were differences in communication and expectation. Meghan's approach, direct, modern, and assertive, clashed with William's adherence to measured protocol and discretion. Decisions about public appearances, charitable engagements, and media strategy became points of friction, revealing not just personality differences, but fundamentally divergent philosophies about how the royal family should operate. Over time, these differences solidified into a rift that affected both interpersonal relationships and the broader public perception of the monarchy. This rift also illuminated the complex interplay between personal relationships and institutional responsibility. William's role as future king demands both loyalty to family and stewardship of the monarchy's public image. Harry, navigating a path that balances royal expectation with personal autonomy, found himself at odds with William's approach, especially in matters concerning Meghan. The tension between personal allegiance and public duty created an emotional and strategic minefield, where every decision carried potential consequences for relationships, reputation, and legacy. Meghan's influence extended beyond family dynamics. Her presence reshaped public engagement with the monarchy, influencing both media narratives and global perception. She brought a modern, relatable sensibility that resonated with younger audiences and international observers. Yet this influence, while celebrated in some quarters, was perceived as a threat in others, particularly within the traditionalist wing of the family. William's regret reflects not only personal disappointment, but also the difficulty of reconciling evolving public expectation with established protocol. The rift, therefore, is both personal and emblematic of broader institutional tension. The emotional toll of this rift was profound. For William, it was the challenge of balancing personal affection with disappointment and duty. For Harry, it was the challenge of protecting a spouse while maintaining familial relationships. For Meghan, it was the challenge of asserting identity and influence within a world defined by historical expectation and public scrutiny. Each member faced unique pressures, yet their interactions were deeply interconnected, forming a network of tension, loyalty, and emotional complexity that would define the family's trajectory for years to come. The stakes were further intensified by the symbolic weight of public perception. Every public appearance, interview, and statement was now interpreted through the lens of the rift. Analysts, historians, and media commentators dissected body language, phrasing, and timing, drawing conclusions about loyalty, influence, and familial alignment.